Hello and a very warm welcome to Business Live. Now we start in Silicon Valley, where the giants of the tech world have been reporting their latest results. Now the biggest of them of all, Apple, has been hailing its best ever quarter. That means it's edging ever closer to becoming the world's first trillion-dollar tech company by stock market value. Well, let's just show you the numbers because they are pretty staggering. Apple made revenues of more, there we go, than $88 billion in the 3 months to the end of December, the all-important holiday shopping season. 20 billion of that was pure profit, and that was up 12.6% on the previous year, setting a new earnings record for the firm. Well, Apple sold some 77.3 million iPhones in the quarter. Now, that was down slightly on last year, raising concerns that the iPhone's popularity is waning. But remember, many sales were of the more expensive and therefore the more profitable iPhone X. And we should put all of this into context for you because according to research just out, global sales of all smartphones were down 9% in the quarter, the biggest fall ever as the markets get saturated. David.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alice. Well, Cyrus Mewawalla, head of investment research at Global Data, joins me now. Cyrus, it's hard to get away from the fact that these just are stunning figures, aren't they? But the handset sales are down a touch.
Yeah, the handset sales are down 1%, but revenues are up 13%, and that's because the iPhone X is more expensive. And some analysts might be worried that, you know, the iPhone, which is 2/3 of Apple's revenues, could be stalling. But actually, this is a product category. If the revenues for that product category keep going up, then I think the company it remains strong.
But I suppose there's still a reality that in terms of selling the hardware, there's a bit of a saturation point being reached, and it's worse for other mobile phone makers, clearly. But that does drive Apple towards having to depend on its services, doesn't it? It's got to make those work now.
It does. Services this quarter was 10% of revenues. It's usually a larger proportion of revenues because this quarter's revenues are quite high because of the Christmas season. And Apple's building its services business quite well. It's got 230 million active subscribers, 30 million just in the last 90 days.
And let me ask you briefly, if there is a risk for Apple, yeah, where is it? I mean, where do they look and think, we've got to watch that coming over the horizon?
Well, Apple's the biggest smartphone maker in the world by revenues. The biggest risk for the iPhone is augmented reality. And by augmented reality, we mean things like Google Glass, which is a pair of glasses that has artificial intelligence in it. You can voice activate it so you can speak to it. It's a smartphone in your head. So if Apple doesn't invest heavily and become a leader in augmented reality, then there's a risk that it could fall, just as Nokia fell when we moved to touchscreens.
We sort of can't stop talking about this race to the $1 trillion value mark. What about Apple versus Amazon and indeed Alphabet? Who's going to get there first? I mean, Amazon are flying at the moment, aren't they?
You mentioned that Apple's a contender for the first trillion-dollar company. It's $850 billion now. But I think there are many contenders. So Alphabet or Google isn't far behind. Neither is Microsoft. And Tencent and Alibaba in China, which you know, are the equivalent internet ecosystems that are strong there, they're also huge contenders. And these companies have been growing for 5 years, and because they have all the characteristics that give them the strength to grow in the next 5 years. And that's because if you look at all the big tech themes coming, whether it's voice, cloud, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, automated home, and so on, you need certain number of characteristics to be successful. You need cloud infrastructure. You need a high high number of users. So they each have about 800 million users. They can roll out new products. And you need cash to invest in these new cycles, and they all have it.
They're all in that race. Cyrus, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now let's just take a look at some of the other